To start with, here's some of the common struggles we're going to go over today. Environment technology, disconnection or communication with your colleagues, disconnection, communication with your supervisor, supervisees, motivation, productivity, self-care, and boundaries. Now, this is going to be kind of overview stuff. I'm not going to do a lot of specific examples, but if someone has something specific they want to bring up, I have a slide put aside for specific examples, and you're also welcome to bring them up at any time. So creating the ideal workspace. There's a lot of things we don't always consider when you're working at home versus in the office. So one of the big ones is do have an area that you can work that is separate from the areas that you relax and you can socialize. There's a lot of reasons for this. For one, if, for example, a lot of people like working on their favorite couch or they're a lazy boy or in bed. One of the problems mentally is now it becomes more normal for you to think of work in those places. And so it becomes harder to relax at home. So really having a separate area. Now I recognize that not everyone has, a big house with a lot of space, but really do consider what you can do to make that space separate. Sometimes, the kitchen counter. Sometimes it's really having a little small desk in the corner of the living room that's just the desk where you work. But really keeping it separate from the areas where you play, where you hang out with your family, friends, and the areas you sleep. Otherwise, you're going to end up thinking about work when you don't want to be thinking about work. And it's also going to make it really hard to enjoy your relaxing time at home. It can also make it hard to focus, which is where do be aware of any distractions that may be available. So if you have the TV there, dang, it's hard not to just turn it on. If you have, your puppies are wonderful. But if you really need to focus, consider, is that a good area for your work? Do invest in furniture, equipment, and internet that does not hinder your work. Sometimes your workplace can help with the cost or finding just the right stuff. One of the most common ones I see for someone working at home is bad internet that's choppy or not fast enough. If you're doing a lot of internet-based work, you really do want to make sure that you have internet that will allow you to do that work. You definitely don't want to have a job that you have to do, but you don't have the equipment to do it. It just makes you feel like you're failing. And it makes it stressful. It makes bosses upset. Really looking at what can I do to make this workable. But also furniture. I've known many people that when we first started working from home way back when in 2020, there are people that would just, take a folding chair and that was their work chair. That's fine, short term, but long term, that can really do some not so great things to your body. It's hard to focus. It can be hard to even, get right on your screen if you're doing a video call, if you don't have the right kind of chair, desk, if you don't have the drawers you need to store stuff. Same with equipment. And one of the things we've run out of the habit of with people working at home is remembering, oh yeah, I had that at the office. I don't have that here. So for example, if you have stuff that's, paperwork that you need to file somewhere, do you have a place to file it? If you need headphones, do you have headphones that do the job? Do they work with your phone? Do they work with your computer? Do you have a shredder? If you need a shredder, you probably need to figure out how best to have one. Kind of what I've run into lately with my virtual team is I have documents. How do I scan them? And working out how we're going to scan those. Do not forget to consider lighting, ambient noise, and other living beings in your home. I say living beings because sometimes it's your kid, sometimes it's your spouse, sometimes it's your pet. One of the fun things that have come of us doing a lot of virtual work is I have met so many great pets and children and spouses of a lot of our patients. And honestly, as a therapist, it doesn't bother me much. But if you're in a workplace environment where not having the right lighting, where having your kid run by is going to be a problem, you might want to look at, okay, what's a space that allows me to get this done? Do look at that lighting and ambient noise. Really checking with your camera, is the lighting enough that I can see? Can I see what I'm doing? Can they see my face well? Does it give me weird shadows? And ambient noise. Now, For example, I live in an apartment. I sometimes have noisy neighbors, but looking at things like, okay, how can I manage the noise? White noise machines, sound absorbers. There's different types on the market depending on what kind of house you have, what kind of walls. But even putting something in your own home can help with sound from the outside. And really kind of be considerate of, is this the right space? A lot of people have told me that they can't make their home work. So we talk about what are some places you could go? Is it worth it to rent an office on your own? Is it worth it to work at the library? Is that even appropriate for what you're doing? Or a coffee shop? And that really does depend on your workspace, on the projects you're doing. It depends on privacy concerns and what kind of background you need. But really getting creative to make it the most ideal workspace for you to be able to work and get things done. Well, the other things I'll say is if you're going to work at an office or even one that you privately rented or a library or something, consider that internet. Sometimes it's not going to work well for you. Privacy. With privacy concerns, really look at, do I have information that I have to worry about if someone else would hear it? Could my neighbors hear what I'm working on? Do I have documents or something at home that maybe is a HIPAA or FERPA consideration? And those are just two big privacy laws. Really taking into account what backgrounds you have for meetings. A lot of people like doing, green screen kind of fun things. But if, say, you have a really cool picture in the background that might be offensive to some people at your workplace or some clients you're working with, maybe switch that out or maybe cover it with something. Do be aware of distractions. There are a lot of distractions in our homes. So really be considerate of how can I best get work done. So that's just with environment. With that, I'm going to just list a few health concerns that come from being in front of a computer all day. A lot of us that do remote work in front of a computer. Sitting and leaning over the computer, it's not great for your neck, it's not great for your back. And for a lot of people, it can cause stiffness in your joints or muscles, especially if you're sitting too long. And that could be knees, that could be ankles. Some people will even find stiffness in their hands from the typing. What to really look at is if that is an issue for you is what is the best thing I can do for myself? And pardon, really looking at what's doable, what's affordable, what's helpful. For example, if having a good quality chair is affordable and doable and helps with that stiffness, why not invest in it? And a lot of people say, well, it's just too much money, it's not worth it. But consider the health costs. Is it really worth damaging your back and neck? When you could pay money for a quality chair, for a cushion on the chair. And really, if you're leaning over a computer all day, take a break from it. Really stand up sometimes, stretch, walk around. It really will help prevent damage. We do know that being in front of a screen does damage to eyes, eyesight, and circadian rhythms. And that has to do with the lighting that comes from a computer or tablet or any kind of screen. I always wear blue screen glasses because I get migraines if I'm in front of a computer too long. But that can also help with the circadian rhythms. It can help with being focused. Circadian rhythms have to do with your sleeping patterns. And this is one of those interesting things about humans. When we experience this blue light, it tells us daytime. If I'm looking at this light at night, so say I maybe work a gray shift or like to do my work at night, this is going to keep me awake and might throw off my ability to go to sleep later. So blue screen glasses, some people have a blue screen filter on their computer, can really help reduce that. Holding your phone to your ear. So some people are, using, say, headphones. So I have a pair that are just MPOW headphones. They're Bluetooth, and they connect with both my cell phone and my work phone, so that I'm able to answer both phones. Part of the reason I got that is because when you're doing the thing with your phone between your shoulder and you're trying to type, oh, wow, is that bad for your body? And because phones aren't always the cleanest, and because you may be on a phone all day, it can actually cause ear infections or pain. So really looking at what's the best for me. Now, my headphones were only $35, and you can find quality headphones out there from anywhere from $20 to several hundred really nice ones. But again, a worthy investment for a lot of us. Schedules. One of the things that happens with remote work is sometimes you'll kind of work when you feel like working, which is fine. But if you're not careful, it can really make it hard to know when's sleep time, when's awake time, make it hard to sleep. It can make us feel anxious about projects because we don't know when we're going to feel motivated to get something done and are we going to have time. Sometimes we feel disconnected from life, reality, because our schedules are so funky. Hydration and eating well. A lot of people forget to drink water, eat quality meals because they're struggling to manage what they have on their plate. So these are just some of the health concerns we see. And again, depending on your own workplace, your own availability, what's doable, these are things I'd recommend everyone take a look at to make sure they're not negatively impacting you. So connecting with coworkers. This is one of those funky things again with something you don't think about necessarily until you're out of the office. Now, when you're in a traditional office, you're going to run into your coworkers. You might see them in the break area. You might see them in the parking lot. If you really have a question about a project, you might be able to just walk down the hall and ask. You hear little details like, oh, well, did you hear that Bobby just got that promotion? Did you hear that Sally just had her baby? All those things are part of a traditional office. But when you're at home, sometimes you get disconnected from all that. And it can make us feel isolated. It can make us not feel like we belong as part of our team. It can make us even not like the company we're working for. So one of the big ones is keep up on the emails, announcements, and other correspondence. If your workplace uses an instant message system, actually keep on it. I know it can sometimes be a pain in the butt, but it also is a real pain in the butt when you find out later, wait, so-and-so quit? What do you mean she got a promotion? When did so-and-so pass away? It really just makes us feel disconnected. As human beings, we do like some connection. Even those of us that tend to like to work alone have some like for wanting to know something about the people we work with. Communicate needs, concerns, and questions more than you would in an office. So again, I could just walk down the hall in a traditional office if I had a question. And when I'm talking to someone in person, it's a lot easier to say, wait, I don't understand what you meant by that. Could you explain that in more detail? You know, as I hear that, it sounds like this. And anyone that's ever had a miscommunication via text or email knows how screwy this can get really fast. In a remote work environment, you kind of need to be very explicit, clean communication, and even answer questions that you might not normally answer or cover. Because it's so hard for people to feel comfortable emailing. Because it's in writing, people get nervous. People get busy. I know sometimes during my day, I'll go, oh, yep, I got to answer that email right now. Then the phone rings, someone walks in, and then it's, 3 hours later that I answered that email. Sometimes it's really important. But really making it clear, this is important. I really need an answer in the next hour. Even though that might feel rude, in a remote environment, it's really important to make it clear what your expectations are, where you need answers by, really giving that detail. Just like with a text, you can't get context in a text. You really want to make sure that you go that extra mile. Sometimes if you're trying to express emotion with an email or text, including a picture, a funny meme, or a GIF, really will make a difference there. It will kind of give people the idea of, oh, you're making a funny, or, okay, this was very clear and direct, but you mean it in an encouraging way. It's one of those tricks is if I say something very stern that I don't think sounds stern, but maybe you're in a mood where you're feeling defensive, or you've had a rough day, or you're feeling bad about being behind on a deadline, it's so easy to interpret what I put in an email the wrong way because there's no context. There's not me saying, oh, well, I just wanted to ask because I wanted to keep track of things. I'm not trying to push you. But again, if I'm already nervous, I might go, why are they harping me? I'm trying. Really just more communication, clearest communication, watching that tone, anticipating questions. Make note of personal preferences and show interest in colleagues. When you can't talk to someone or wave to someone every day, something as simple as remembering, oh, hey, she likes to be called Mel instead of Melissa, makes a difference. It makes you feel like, oh, they care, they notice. Asking things like, oh, how's your son doing in college? It's not necessarily that you need to ask all kinds of questions about your colleagues, but it makes us feel warm towards each other. It makes us want to work together. And it also helps when there's those miscommunications to go, okay, well, Brenda was really stern there, but I don't think Brenda meant it that way because I know Brenda. Brenda's really nice. Brenda doesn't talk that way. But if I don't know that, then I have to guess. Getting to know people really helps you not guess. Attend team meetings and events when possible. It's one of those tricky things when you're doing remote work. There's a lot of encouragement to do get-togethers, and sometimes off work hours. A lot of us go, oh, I don't want to go to work when I'm not supposed to be at work. But it does make you look like a team player when you're there. It's a way to know your colleagues in another context. And it doesn't always look good when you're not attending those things. Sometimes it looks like you don't want to participate. You don't want to get to know people. Now be aware that you don't have to usually go to these things. They're usually not mandatory. And yeah, you have a life outside of work. You should. But really looking at, how can I make that work? How can I make some of these events work if you can? You don't want to lose that connection. Connection with supervision. Now, this is for both supervisors and supervisees. Reach out regularly with updates and concerns. Don't wait longer than necessary to reach out. One of the things that'll happen is we'll go, oh, I'll get to that. I got to ask about that. Or, oh, this might be concerning. But you don't want to wait so long that it's on fire every time. It's just too stressful for everybody. And with remote work, sometimes we have different schedules. Sometimes we even have a flexible enough schedule, like work when you feel like working, as long as you get the hours and the project's done. But if I'm, say, working at midnight, it's not reasonable to expect that I'm going to have an answer in the next couple hours from someone that's not going to work till 9 a.m. So really just being mindful of each other and being mindful that the people you supervise might not always see the email when you want them to see it. They might be not checking their email until maybe when they start their shift. Maybe that's not till 10 p.m. and you sent the email at 2 in the afternoon. But that's also where you want to make those expectations explicitly clear. You don't want to make assumptions because it's harder to ask questions when you're at home. So if you really expect your employees to respond to emails in a certain amount of hours and during a certain time period, so it's between 9 and 5, you should be checking your email. Be clear. If you as an employee expect, I'll check my email when I'm working at least 3 times a day. Okay, but make that clear. Otherwise, bosses, employees can make assumptions. And it can really make a workplace unpleasant. It can make us feel like we're not doing a good job when we are. Privacy is still an important consideration. Even with remote work, we still got to be careful about what we tell each other about our coworkers, what our boss said to us. But sometimes we get a little loose with that when we're doing some virtual work. As a supervisor and an employee, also consider that sometimes in virtual work, you don't always hear the whole story. So sometimes it looks like maybe an employee got special privileges, but you don't know some of the stuff that made it so that that is the way it is. Likewise, sometimes as a boss, it looks like, oh, you're showing preference to this person. So really keep in mind, how does this look to other people who don't have all that information? Now, in a traditional office environment, a lot of time, even though I'm not a huge gossip fan, a lot of that gets covered. You might go to that coworker event. Well, it seems like Bobby always gets away with that. Well, did you know that Bobby does this because of this? That's why we do it that way. So it gets covered a lot of times. We don't necessarily do that in a virtual environment. even when you're doing regular team meetings. Just not as easy to go, hey, what about this? Not as easy to do that in Zoom, even with the private chat feature. I apologize. Oh, cotton. Gotta love it when Utah's blowing around cotton. Don't let every interaction be critical feedback concerns. One of the things that can happen in any workplace, but especially a virtual workplace, is that the only time you email your boss or the only time you email your supervisees is to be critical or say, where's this? When's this coming on? You start to dread just hearing the ding of your email. You start to not want to look. And again, in a traditional office environment, we're going to have other interactions. It might be us walking across each other when we're getting coffee in the break room, but you're not going to have that in the virtual environment. So all your interactions are critical. They're feedback. They're, I don't know if we're going to get this done in time. You're not going to have a pleasant, strong relationship with the people you work with. Do facilitate opportunities for connection beyond work projects. I don't necessarily mean like after work get-togethers, but even just times in meetings to check in with each other. Even just having charity things that your team can do together, contests, ways to connect. There's a lot of great ideas on how to do that. One of my personal favorites that I've actually done with a team before was we had, and yeah, this is a little while back, so I don't know if it would still work. We had a crown in my office, and we worked in different offices for whoever had been on hold with Medicare, Medicaid the longest. And I won for a while for 3 hours, and I had that crown for a month. And we would just pass that crown around. And it was just a joking, silly thing that we did. It can build that team mentality, something like that. Having employees of the month, you know, trivia nights, things that just are fun, that makes us go, okay, it's work, but work's fun too. Be aware of common struggles with working remote and show patience for each other. One of the things we saw a lot last year, people would say, well, I don't understand why Molly's kid is just so noisy. Can't you do something about that? Well, you know, Molly's probably doing her best. And getting mad at Molly might not help. Might need to talk to her about it if it's really disrupting things. Might not, but being patient with each other. When the internet goes out, really not making it a big, super upsetting deal. It happens. And getting angry at each other is not going to help. Really just showing patience and being aware that remote has some different challenges. It just makes the whole work environment feel positive and not like a negative drag. A lot of people will feel isolated in doing remote work. Some people get their only social contact at work. So increasing social contact in a way that feels comfortable and doable for you. That could be stuff with connecting with colleagues. That could be having time with your family, your boyfriend's girlfriends. Could be having a bowling club. Everyone's different. Not everyone wants to be out among people all day. But a lot of people need a little bit of social contact. One of the things I'll even tell some people who last year would say, okay, I'm an introvert. I'm working at home and I love it, but I feel lonely. What the heck? Again, sometimes you still need that social contact. A lot of those patients I suggested, go out just a little bit. Go out to the park a little bit and just watch people. You don't have to talk. Nowadays, as movie theaters are opening, go to a movie. Share a social experience with 30 other people. It's frowned upon to talk even. But we all need some of that social contact. Again, keep in mind what you like. No reason to become a social butterfly if you don't want to. Increase awareness of the world outside your workspace. A lot of times you're spending so much time in front of the computer and with a project and everything is work, work, work. It just feels like a drag. But when you do things like take a walk during your break, open the window and look outside, talk with somebody, even if it's just the mailman, it makes us feel like we're still part of the rest of the world. There is more than just our little desk. I do recommend being cautious with using social media, to feel better when you're feeling lonely or isolated. Social media is a great thing. But social media has some dark sides to it. And sometimes it makes us feel like, oh, look at all the things that everyone else is doing and feeling accomplished with, and feeling more isolated because of that. Sometimes there's some really negative, nasty stuff on social media that makes us feel like, wow, the world is crap. So nothing wrong with social media. Just be careful to try to fix isolation with that. Sometimes it has the opposite effect. Make time for non-work activities and purpose beyond your commitments. I run into people all the time that when I say, what do you do for fun? Well, I go to work, then when I come home, I take care of the kids, and maybe they have school stuff or taking care of stuff at the house, remodeling. I ask, well, no, what do you do that's not a commitment? What's something you choose to do, not because you have to, because you want to? And a lot of people tell me, I don't know, kids. I'm like, well, yeah, I hope you want to be around your kids, but that's also a have to. And hobbies give us a feeling of I matter as a person. I have value. There's something worth putting my energy in. Everyone needs something outside of work. If all you have is work, at some point you might not want to get out of bed if work's not going so well. Having people, having things that are worth it to you, that are worth being awake for. It helps us work to know there's other things. Take breaks regularly. Human attention span, on average, is about 20 minutes. So if you're going to try for a whole hour to focus on a project, odds are your attention span is going to start slipping. Better off going, okay, I'm going to work on this for 30 minutes, get up, get something to drink, go to the bathroom, maybe check the mail, and then go back to work. You don't want to overdo it because then you won't get stuff done. But you do want to take breaks regularly. Again, also good for your body. We talked about that earlier. To get out of the chair and away from the screen for just a little bit. If you, for example, did 20 minutes of work, 10-minute break, 20 minutes of work, 10-minute break, you're going to get 40 solid minutes of work. That's way better than, I got 30 minutes of work done and the rest was subpar. Connecting with colleagues, again, not a requirement, but it helps. It really helps with your interactions with work, with not feeling isolated, with work being a smoother environment. Maintaining motivation. Like I said, sometimes we can pick our own schedules when we're working remotely, but that also can mean sometimes we procrastinate. Really building and maintaining a solid routine. Getting up at the same time, going to bed at the same time. Having your work time be set times, your snack breaks, your lunch breaks, so that you really stick with it. What this does mentally is your brain is going to build a habit. And so if at 10 o'clock on Monday morning, you're not working, your brain's going to go, hey, something's off here. It's going to help you with giving you that motivation of, oh, well, I should be doing this. Also with sleep, if you're not getting up and going to bed at the same time, it's really hard when you're working remote to get up and get going because you might be really tired. And if you're leaving projects the last minute and doing those all-nighters, that can really throw off a sleep routine. Keeping goals and expectations realistic. This happens in all workplaces, not just remote workplaces, where, well, if we just get all 100 of these things done, we'll be good. Well, you might not be able to get all 100 done. What can you realistically? Sometimes bosses are not realistic in what they request. Pardon me. I've heard many cases of people going, well, my boss wants to get this done, but I don't have the equipment to do this at the speed I need to, so this is going to take longer. But if you then decide, well, I just got to work harder to get it done at that deadline, you're picking something that you can't actually control. You can't make yourself do something when you don't have the right equipment or the right timeline. But if you convince yourself, all you got to do is just work harder. I got to work a little smarter. I can make this happen. Ultimately, you're going to feel like you failed. You're trying to do something you can't do. Let's keep those goals and expectations realistic. Importance of tangibility. Because the work is often on computers when we're doing remote work, we don't always see the results of what we're doing. And that can sometimes make us feel like, what's the point? In IT, for example, a lot of the times you're fixing problems, so you only see people when things aren't working. And so you're not going to hear from people on, wow, you fixed that thing and we're doing great. Same with helping professions like mine. You don't see people when they're doing great. You see them when they're doing not so great. If you're doing something in the computer, you might spend all day on a project and not have anything to show at the end of the day because it went somewhere else. So having hobbies, having checklists, even instead of writing a to-do list, writing a list of what you got done today. Something that helps you see the impact you're having. It really does help you not feel so burned out or unmotivated. Self-care and life outside the job. Making time to sleep, eat, take care of your health, have hobbies, have friends and family. If you don't have those things and work's all you got going, what happens when work's not going well? You have to have a really healthy life outside of work to have a healthy work life. And again, a real break. A lot of people on lunch hours will be, okay, I'm gonna eat, I'm gonna work on this paperwork. That's not a real break. It helps your brain if you just take a break. Kind of like if you read the same paragraph again and again. Sometimes you gotta walk away from it so that you can look at it with fresh eyes. It's the same with any work project. And really celebrate the victories. That's an important thing for supervisors, but it's important for all of us. Really notice what you're accomplishing. Otherwise, your work's gonna feel pointless and you're not gonna be motivated. Work on boundaries. We talked earlier, separate space for work and other activities. This one's a little controversial, but work clothes. So honestly, your workplace might be the place where you can wear pajamas, where you can wear leggings. Just keep in mind, if I'm wearing pajamas, it's easier to go, I want to take a nap. Sometimes something as simple as putting on work clothes helps you keep in the mindset for work. I'm not necessarily saying everyone should wear three-piece suits. In fact, I really wouldn't recommend it. But it does help with keeping that mind work and home. Even switching into non-work clothes once you're done with work just helps keep those things separate. Keep work stuff off personal devices and personal stuff off work devices. Now, some workplaces have different rules than others. Some of us don't have the flexibility to have a work computer and a home computer. But really keep in mind, this is one of the things that happens a lot with trying to work when we should be relaxing. It's also something that can cause some major faux pas at work. I've heard so many horror stories over the last, 18 months or so of people who were trying to email their boss something and accidentally sent something personal, or had some file that was on a personal computer and the personal computer got used by someone that shouldn't have. It's also a thing of, if I have my phone, my personal phone with my work email, is things secure? Is it password protected? Is there someone else that could use my phone and see something they're not supposed to? I even had a really sad case I was reading about where a coworker was hanging out with a supervisor they were friends with. The supervisor got a text from someone about someone working in trouble, and unfortunately the employee saw it because they were sitting together, and a lot of our phones will blink right there. It's something you gotta just be careful of. It's easier to slip up when you're doing remote work. PTO, breaks, sick days. A lot of people get out of the habit of using these things when they're working remote, when they're working at home. They're still important. If you need a sick day, you need a sick day. You can't work and be sick sometimes. Sometimes you really need to be resting, or you really need to be taking care of your child. You're gonna know better than I what works best for your work. But you shouldn't sacrifice your health and mental health for a job. There needs to be lines there. And unfortunately, even some of the best workplaces, if you don't say uncle, will say, hey, can you do this too? And this and this? You sure you can't come in today? It's up to you to protect your own self-care, your own breaks, your own PTO. One of the things I tell people all the time, just take one day off a month. If you have trouble using PTO, one day off a month. And if you don't use it for anything else, use it for errands and doctor's appointments. Get you in the habit of taking that real break. Other thing with work-home boundaries, if you're taking the day off, careful about spending it all day at home. If your work computer is right there, you hear a work email go off on your phone, it's going to be tempting. I even recommend, if your workplace allows it, to turn off alerts on your work emails. If you can. Some workplaces you can't. Just so that you can mentally really relax. Leave work at work. If you are thinking about work when you're not at work, you are working for free. Doesn't matter how good your workplace is, no workplace deserves that. Really setting these boundaries in place. Trying not to work when you should be relaxing. And really trusting that your team, your workplace has things handled when you're not there. If it doesn't, maybe that speaks to a problem at the workplace, not necessarily you. Locus of control is a term we use in therapy to talk about what we can control and what we can't. If you're trying to control something you can't control, ultimately you're going to feel like you failed, you ran to a brick wall and didn't go down. Sometimes a workplace is a bigger problem that you didn't cause. You can't necessarily fix that. The big one I'm hearing right now, people are understaffed, and it's all industries, not any one industry. But if your workplace is understaffed, you working more hours, you working through lunch, you canceling, pardon me, your PTO isn't going to fix that problem. And it might hurt you. You might even, by deciding, well, I'm just going to work through lunch, imply that maybe we don't need more staff in this team because we're still getting everything done. That's not helpful. That's hurtful. Hurts not just you, but your whole team. Really be cautious about not making a workaround, not trying to fix something that you don't have the responsibility or ability to fix. I do go into more of that in the webinar I did on burnout, which is also on our YouTube page. Now I meant to leave a little more time. I did want to leave some time for anyone that had specific scenarios or questions they wanted to discuss, just because I know that was more of an overview and that some of those situations don't apply to everybody. If you're uncomfortable asking here, you can shoot me an email. You can ask Heather privately on the BH webinar. Or if it's really kind of a bigger issue, you can schedule an appointment with us here at Blomquist Hale. So does anyone have any questions or specific scenarios they want to bring up?
I don't see any in the chat. So if you guys have questions, send them in real quick. But while we wait, like I said earlier, I'll send you this recording and yeah, you should get this later this week.
Well, while we're waiting for that, I'll just go to the next slide, which just has some resources I recommend. Ask a Manager is a book and a blog. I recommend both. It's done by Allison Green, and I actually use it for advice all the time when I'm working with some of our patients that have questions about, how do I ask my boss for a raise? How do I help this coworker with this? It's kind of like a Dear Abby. You can ask questions, and not only will Allison give you answers, but sometimes some of the other readers. Psychology Today has a lot of articles on remote working, mental health concerns. It's a really great website. It's also a great place to look up counselors in your area. John Gottman's someone we use here a lot. He wrote a book called The Relationship Cure, and it's taken a lot of his concepts from marriage counseling and applying them to other scenarios, including the workplace. Some of you who may have done some couples counseling might have heard things like emotional banks and bids for attention. That's all gone over in a workplace context in The Relationship Cure. You can also find a lot of these articles on his blog, which is at gottman.com. Lisette Sutherland is someone I came across recently, and I actually read some of her stuff before doing this webinar. She keeps a blog, and the website's right there, on working from home. And she's just written a book on a handbook for working remotely, and it's a really interesting read.
So we had one question come in.
Uh-huh.
What can employees at the office do to help remote employees stay connected?
So part of that is, again, trying to have that personal touch. So an opportunity in meetings, just say, does anyone have any cool news to share? Is a way to keep in touch. Allowing for there to be a Zoom room where people can have lunch together and chat with each other. Contests that you can be involved in. The trick is you're not going to have natural get-togethers like you would in a traditional office environment. Again, in a traditional office environment, I might see you in the break room. I might see you in the parking lot. That shouldn't happen in a remote environment unless there's some weirdness going on. So you kind of got to create the opportunities for some personal connection. And some employees do resist because, you know, I've worked all day. Now you want me to do other stuff. So working it into the day naturally. Something as simple as at the end of your email asking, hey, I meant to ask, how's school going? It really just helps us feel connected. One of my personal favorites is, oh, I should have included it on this resource, Fish. It's a book that came out several years ago, and it's about building positivity and motivation in the workplace. Now, this was written way before remote working was a thing, but it has a lot of really cool ideas on how to keep people connected and positivity. One of the things that a workplace I used to work at used to do is we had a game that we would have going every year. It used to be, we'd play poker. Now it's Go Fish because we built a gambling addictions office. And so no more poker. But each employee would have 2 cards. And you could ask any employee if they had the card you needed, they had to give it up. And if you got a, match of 4, you could get a prize. Or if you got, a poker hand that was worth anything. It was a way to kind of force us to interact with each other. Because I want to get it was fish animals, I think. I need to get a seahorse, and I think Monica might have a seahorse, even though I don't usually talk to Monica. It's a great way to connect. Having that crown was a way for my team to connect. It really depends a little bit on your workplace culture and on how willing people are to do things, but kind of creating the opportunity in the easiest way you can.